literature lovers. It is September 23rd, 2021. This is your virtual video for today. Hopefully this will be our last virtual video that we have to do for a while. I would much rather be in person discussing with you. So I'm going to actually give a review of the Odyssey and some of the analysis of what's happening, and so you can make sure you're understanding what's going on. Your homework is attached to this email, and so remember, it's due next Thursday. All right, so you have a week to work on that. This is going to be a fairly brief video, so I want you to spend what would normally be the rest of our class time reading, because you have a big chunk of reading this week, and that's the most important thing that you can do, is get your reading, make sure you're caught up by next Thursday with the full assignment included in your homework. So we're going to kind of review what we read last week or in the past week. And so all the gods except Poseidon gather again on Mount Olympus to discuss Odysseus' fate. Athena's speech in support of Odysseus prevails on Zeus to intervene. Remember, he's trapped on Calypso's island, and Athena wants him to be able to leave and continue to head home. And so Hermes, the messenger of the gods, is sent to Calypso's island to tell her that Odysseus must at last be allowed to leave so he can return home. And Calypso is not happy about this, and so in reply she gives this kind of impassioned speech about, you know, the male gods, and they have double standards and they're not fair to the female gods. And she complains that they're allowed to take all the mortal women that they want, while the affairs of female gods will always be frustrated because they're jealous and they'll stop all the female gods from having any mortal relationships. And in the end, she has to submit. And while she tells them the female gods will always be frustrated by them, by the male gods, but she submits to the supreme will of Zeus, because he is Zeus and she doesn't have a lot of choice. So Odysseus is the only one left from the group that he led at Troy. His crew and the other boats in his forces were all destroyed during his journeys. And so Calypso helps him build a new boat and gives him provisions, food and stuff from her island. And very sadly, she watches her love sail away. And so then Odysseus is at sea for 18 days. And he sees an island called Scheria, which is the island of the people called the Phaeacians. And this is where the gods have appointed him to go next. And so Poseidon is just returning from Ethiopia, and he sees Odysseus and realizes that the other gods have been doing things in his absence, and he's not happy. And so Poseidon, being Poseidon, stirs up a storm which almost drags Odysseus under the sea. But another goddess by the name of Ino, I-N-O is how you spell that, comes to his rescue. She gives him a veil that keeps him safe while his ship is wrecked. Athena also comes to his rescue as he's being, tossed back and forth out on the deepest part of the sea, and now being pushed up against the jagged rocks of the coast. She directs him to a river up the coast of the island, which answers his prayers and allows him to swim in its waters. And he also throws his protective veil back in the water, as Ino had commanded him to do, and he walks inland and rests in the safety of the forest. So that night, Athena appears in a dream to the Phaeacian princess Nausicaa. She is disguised herself as Nausicaa's friend, and she encourages the young princess to go to the river the next day to do her laundry, to wash her clothes in the river. And that way she will appear more fetching, more attractive to the many men who are courting her. And the next morning, Nausicaa does as she's told. She goes down to the river, and while she and her handmaidens have removed all their clothing and are playing a game in the river while their clothes get dry, Odysseus wakes up in the forest and encounters them. He is also naked at this point, and so he humbly pleads for their help, but he doesn't reveal his identity. And so Nausicaa leaves him alone to wash the dirt and the sea water, the brine from the sea, off his body. And Athena then makes him look especially handsome to Nausicaa. And so when she sees him again, she begins to fall in love with him. And she is afraid of walking into the city alone with a strange man at her side. So Nausicaa gives him directions how to get to her palace, and also gives him advice on how to approach Ariete, or Arete, depending on how the Greeks pronounce it, who is the queen of the Phaeacians, and when he meets her. And so with a prayer to Athena for hospitality from the Phaeacians, Odysseus sets out on a little small side journey to get to the palace. So as we look at the story, we see with our first encounter of Odysseus that confirms to us what we've already learned about him from the story that Menelaus and Helen tell of his feats during the Trojan War. And Homer's audience already knew, they would have already known this, that Odysseus was very smart, very cunning, but he was also deliberate. Like, he took his time. Wasn't rash. He didn't rush into things. And Homer really wants to show him, like, thinking through and weighing every decision, whether it's trying to land on the rocky coast of Scheria, or whether it's to rest by the river or to shelter in the woods, whether it's to give the customary gesture of supplication to Nausicaa by embracing her knees, like falling to the ground, embracing her knees. That was what the Greeks did to show that they were lower and that they were under their power. Or should he stand back and just address her from afar? So he thinks through all these things, and he takes this measured, careful, deep thinking approach, and it kind of shows the balance in Odysseus' character. He has this warrior mentality. He's aggressive and determined. He is far from rash. He doesn't rush into things. He's cautious. He's thoughtful. The word shrewd kind of means thoughtful and cautious. That would apply to him. But he's also extremely self-confident. At one point, he even ignores the goddess Ino's advice and does what he says seems best to me. And in each case, he makes a decision, takes action with speed and with poise. And in his encounter with Nausicaa, we see his skill in interacting with people and his charisma. People just like him when they meet him. That's charisma. There's just something about a person that makes you want to know them. And we also see a lot of Odysseus with these inner debates. He is thinking about what goes on. He doesn't just ever jump without thinking. That's just a big characteristic. And the Odyssey, we see from the difference between the Iliad and the Odyssey is the Iliad is about big, grand battles and heroes and tragedy of the war, whereas the Odyssey is more about the human heart, like what we don't see in people, but what is really inside them. Feelings, loneliness, confusion, despair. We first meet Odysseus in a very unheroic kind of a way, even though he's this huge hero of the Trojan War. Remember, he's the one who had the idea for the Trojan horse, and he was the leader of the men who were in the Trojan horse. So, but when we first meet him, he's sulking on a beach, wishing he was home. He's alone except for this lovesick goddess Calypso, who's imprisoned him there. And it's kind of pathetic. It's not what we see him in the Iliad. It's a big contrast. And Calypso gives this speech to the gods, right? When she's telling them basically that they treat, men have much more relaxed rules when it comes to humans, where the female gods have like very strict rules and have to behave, and how they're what we would call in our day and age a male chauvinist. Like they give men certain advantages to be men, while women have to have strict rules. And so some commentators see that speech as this realistic, unflinching account of the way things work in the patriarchal, dominated by men and fathers of ancient Greece, while men of the mortal world and Zeus and the other male gods can get away with the behavior. Society expects females to be faithful, but others see Calypso's diatribe as the reaction to that reality, not that she is condemning it, but that she's just describing it. But she does, make this critique and this passionate speech of how the world works and how the world is genuinely hypocritical. So let's move on to book 7 and 8, which you should be finished with book 8 today. Yes, today. So you know what? Instead of doing that, since you're going to finish 7 and 8 today, if you haven't already, I'm going to cut this short and I'm going to let you get your reading done. That's what you need to do for the rest of this class time. All right? Hopefully everybody is better and nobody has COVID and nobody has symptoms, and we can all see each other on Tuesday at co-op in person, which is always a much better situation. Even though I love doing virtual videos for you, I'd much rather see you in person. So that's it for today, and hope to see you Tuesday. Bye for now.